Hey everyone, welcome to the Craft Beer Professionals 2025 Spring Virtual Conference. Small Batch Standard is pumped to be the day one sponsor, and we're even more excited to help you generate more profit. Right now, today, it has never been harder to generate profit in the craft brewing industry. And here's why. If these two graphs don't paint a clear picture of what's happening in craft today, I don't know what will. In order to help you navigate this, we have put something together just for you. We call it the Small Batch Standard Profit Plays. These are excerpts from our profit playbook and include our top strategies for boosting profit at your brewery. And because you're here today, you get those plays for free. So head over to sbstandard.com/CBP to claim your copy. Thanks for being here and enjoy the talk.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have a ton of background noise for some reason. Oh, there we go. That's Mendy. Mendy, I can't see you yet. Maybe that'll come through. But thank you so much for joining us. We have a really unique presentation this morning, and I'm super excited about it, especially because Andrew was the one who said to me, I have two really interesting statements that have kind of popped out from all of the feedback and all of the comments that we've seen on our site, on the CBP Facebook site. He said, there's two foundational questions that I'd love for you to build your presentation on today. The first one is, it's not so much a question as changing markets bring fresh opportunities. And the second is, slightly paraphrased, many customers don't know what they want. It's our job as brewers and brewery owners to create a high-end, unique product and educate the consumer and make them want what we have to sell. So we called our talk Navigating Uncharted Waters: Who Determines the Course, Brewers or Customers? I've got a really awesome panel today. I wanted to take a second to thank Small Batch Standard, you just saw Chris's face, and InTouch Labels for sponsoring the CBP Spring Virtual Conference. It's super cool to be able to keep these free. I'm Laura Lodge. I am the co-founder of Start A Brewery. If you're not familiar with Start A Brewery, go over and take a look. It's a free resource for breweries and planning and startup breweries with a ton of information that's provided by our contributors. We have a fantastic bunch of contributors, 4 of which are with us today. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. In the meantime, if you have any comments or questions, whether you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook Live, feel free to pop them in the comments. We'll see them and be able to tackle them as we go. So yeah, if you guys would do self-introductions and let us know a little bit about you. Charlie, you're next on my Brady Bunch if you'd start.
Okay. Charlie Gottenkieny, Bruz Beers. I'm a co-founder. We founded the brewery back in 2016. I've been home brewing since 1988. I learned how to homebrew after my first trip to Belgium when if I didn't make it, I didn't drink it. So at any rate, that's eventually come into the brewery world. And we're actually having a good time despite the rough waters these days. So,
but thank you so much. Definitely rough waters. Tim?
Hey, everybody. Tim Myers, founder and head brewer from Strange Craft Beer Company in Denver, Colorado. When we opened back in 2010, there were 9 breweries in Denver, none of which were taproom breweries. So we're Denver's first taproom brewery. 15 years next month. Pretty amazing that we've made it this far, and hopefully we've learned a few things that we can share with you today.
We know this to be true. Mendy?
My name is Mendel. I'm with Left Hand Brewing Company. Been in the industry since 1987. I'm a co-founder of Tabernash Brewing Company, which merged with Left Hand in 1998. When we opened, we were I want to say somewhere in the 330th craft brewery in the country. This was back in 1993. Since then, we've been in business for 31 years. And in addition to being on Left Hand's board of directors, I've done a lot of education within the industry. I am just now stepping off the Brewers Association's events committee. I've been on that committee for about 18 years. So I've done lots of different things. I've co-founded the Colorado Brewers Guild in 1995. So I've been around the block a few times.
Heard. Laura?
Yeah, hi. My brother and I opened a craft brewery here in Denver in 2015. Unfortunately, we did close in 2021, a little bit of a victim of the higher rent prices that we're seeing across the country. But a big piece of opening and running that brewery for me was education, and immediately started working on educating people on craft beer, especially people who weren't typically considered the craft beer customer, especially in 2015. So I spun that off into Craft Beer Uncovered, which is an educational piece that's supposed to be very low barrier, very welcoming, and accessible to all.
Very cool. We're gonna start with that. I wanted to give our listeners a little bit of an idea of how we pulled this together. We took those foundational questions and then kind of distilled them back into who determines the course, the brewers or the customers. And we came up with 3 different main categories we wanted to talk with you about today. We want to talk about education. That was definitely mentioned in all areas here. We want to talk about beer the product versus beer the experience. Mendy brought that up as a point when we were doing our discussions, and we want to dive into that a little bit. And then personalization, connection, and community are another piece that kind of is getting into the changing markets, getting into us brewing whatever we want to versus listening to the consumer. So we want to talk about that as well. So let's start with education. Laura, you talked a lot about opening the door. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We first opened, almost immediately, I noticed that I would have customers come up to the bar, after looking at our menu and say, I have a really stupid question, but. And right then I wanted to stop them there because I knew they were going to ask a question about our beer lists. And these are your patrons who are A, purchasing something from you, and B, this is a product that they're going to be putting into their body. So there was no stupid questions. But I realized that there was this barrier to craft beer that, especially in Denver, you were supposed to already know about the different types of beers and what you liked and what you didn't like. And so that really spun off this need for education. And when people know what they like when they come to a brewery, they become repeat customers because of the way that you made them feel. All right. They're not going to say, oh, I went in, somebody treated me like I was dumb because I didn't know this or that. They're going to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea what a sour beer was, but I went to this brewery and they had me try it. And they said that they thought I would like this because I like rosés or something like that. And so the piece of education is not just so that people are more educated, but it actually has a positive impact on your repeat customers and how people view your brewery.
100%. Charlie, of this whole group here, you're the one who makes beers that people are least likely to be understanding of or familiar with. How do you tackle that in your brewery?
Well, yeah, we do all Belgian style beers, and as far as customers, they don't know what they don't know. So we feel it's up to us to educate them on that, and we do it in a number of ways. We actually do classes every month where it's a guided tasting through anywhere from 12 to 14 beers. I do that as a live class, and we also have a lot of events, and so we'll pair beers with everything from Girl Scout cookies to macaroons to chocolate to savory items and things like that. And a lot of people show up for that, and they learn some things, and then the next time they come in, they have a better idea of the range of what they want. And then that's also supplemented by our bar staff, who do a lot of educating on their own.
Do you curate some training for your staff? How do you do that?
Pardon?
Do you curate some training for your staff? How do you do that?
Oh, absolutely. We do staff training. We do it on periodically just on new beers that we're bringing online. We've also done it. We'll actually have little mini classes for the staff on a particular style of beer. Say wit beer, we'll let them taste several different examples in addition to ours, and become more familiar with it. Be able to talk about the style, the history of the style, what part of Belgium it's made in, and things like that. And people seem very interested in a lot of that when they're exposed to it. So it's worked well for us.
Nice. Tim, will you carry that baton? Like, what happens when you're doing a new beer in your brewery?
Well, we try and hype it up in advance. Hopefully I'm organized enough that I know what day or what week a beer is coming out. And we also, one of the benefits of our mug club, I'll talk about the mug club a little more in a second. One of the benefits that they get is they get a sneak preview the night before the beer goes on tap for the public. So we send out in the newsletter, here's the beers Tim's got coming out this month. But, say we're releasing it on Friday, Mug Club gets to try it on Thursday. And that's kind of a little reward and thank you for their ongoing support. We also do a thing called One Barrel Wednesday. When we opened back in 2010, we were brewing on my homebrew setup, and that allowed us to do a lot of experimentation. So Wednesdays, often we will have something small batch coming out. People come in just to see what the heck did Tim create this week. And we have some fun with that. It's kind of an Iron Chef thing. I'll have a friend come over, a fellow brewer come over, and they just bring a handful of ingredients and we make up a beer. But the fun part with that is it's always going to be something new. It's only going to be around for a couple of days and then it's gone. So we try and hype that up. Rarity helps create interest, so to speak.
100%. Mendy, you guys do more with community and education with Ales for Females. Will you talk about how that came about and how it works?
Well, Ales for Females has been in existence for, I want to say somewhere around 20 to 25 years. And it was actually brought to us by a consumer, a female consumer who was frustrated, I think, that most beer marketing was male oriented at the time. And I think if I remember correctly, her comment was, women want to be where the men are at the bar drinking beer. So we need to learn about beer. And so our founder's wife came up with the idea of having this special classes for women only to teach them about beer. We came up with the Ales for Females concept, and it became very popular. We do something every month. Prior to COVID, the membership was, somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 women. COVID really obviously hurt the program, but we restarted it after COVID, gaining steam again. This is just one example of a directed education program that you could do to bring consumers in. And I think another point is, obviously well-trained staff. That's the first line of education for our consumers.
100%. So one of the things that you mentioned when we were doing our pre-conference meeting was the difference between beer the product and beer the experience. Will you kind of introduce that concept and then we'll play from there?
Sure. In my mind, beer the product refers to beer being purchased at sale, versus beer the experience, people going to the brewery, the tap room, to have not just beer, but have an experience. In terms of beer the product, I believe that we've gotten to a point where maybe our price has gotten too high. All of alcohol is in the doldrums at the moment. Non-alcoholic beverages are what's more popular with the younger, more spending-oriented generation. And so, distributors are bringing in fewer craft beers. Retailers aren't allocating as much shelf space to craft beer as they used to. And so the kind of the bloom is off the rose in terms of craft beer at retail. However, in my personal experience traveling around visiting breweries, there's still a lot of energy and a lot of enjoyment and excitement in going to the brewery and hanging out with friends and enjoying casual conversation. That just seems to be an experience. Again, we're talking about beer the experience, and that's where people are landing right now. Is people want experience more than they want a product. So I think what Charlie and Tim are doing is awesome because people come to them for an experience. We have our experiential outlets as well: tasting room, beer garden. We have a restaurant in Rhino, and it's our way for us to connect directly with consumers, which is extremely important in this competitive environment.
And in this way, we're actually working with the consumer and listening to what they want, in addition to educating them about what we want to brew. So, Charlie, you commented that this is all about turning a transaction into an experience. Will you elaborate on that?
Sure. When you walk into a bar and you or a brewery and order a beer and somebody delivers it to you and then walks away, well, that was a transaction. I gave you beer, you gave me money. That's not really an experience, though. An experience comes from getting a personal connection in there and making people, giving them something they're not going to get somewhere else. So one of the things that we've done a lot of times is I just Friday night did a beer and cheese pairing, and 4 beers, 4 cheeses. A bunch of people showed up for it and really had a good time. And it was an experience. It wasn't just going and drinking a few beers. It was an opportunity to interact with those of us from Bruz as well as each other. And, another incredible experience we do every year is a trip over to Belgium, where we spend 10 days riding around on a big Mercedes bus, going to breweries, going to restaurants, going to cities, making chocolate. I mean, you name it. We create just a kind of immersive experience for 10 days. And we have people that come back from those trips, and sometimes we'll fly out to the brewery from Los Angeles to have a little reunion with their friends from the trip. So again, that was one of the things that taught us a lot about beer experience. And, we've observed it when we've gone other places, and it's always better than the transaction.
100%. Tim, will you pick up from there? You've mentioned the community, the beer family at Strange, but also you had some comments about the importance of festivals. How does that all build together?
Yeah, let me first talk about, so one of the experiences that I find extremely important starts with my crew, with my staff, my bartenders. I learned early on from Scott Whitsoe, founder and brewer at Wits End Brewing, when somebody walks in the door, they want to try your beers, but it's an experience that they want. He always introduced himself. He always shook their hand, and he started a conversation, made them feel welcome, made them feel at home. I've got a great crew of bartenders that I don't know how they do it. I don't have this skill, but they can remember somebody they haven't seen in a year and pick up a conversation that they were having the last time somebody was in the brewery. They remember their dog's name. They remember their kid's name, and they remember what beer they like. Sometimes when my mug clubbers come in, my bartender already has their mug filled with their favorite beer, waiting for them to sit down at their favorite bar stool. And that in and of itself is an experience, because it makes your customers feel welcome. It makes them feel like family. And that's always been special to us. And that led to a hardcore group of regulars that came in quite a bit. And to reward them more so than for our own benefit, we created a mug club to give them some special benefits: a 20-ounce mug instead of a 16-ounce pint glass, and discounts on product, discounts on merch. And we do a Rockies game every summer. We take 75 of our mug clubbers to the Rockies game and hang out and have fun. I don't know how craft beery that is when we're all drinking $3 Coors Banquets up in the bleachers in center field, but it's a good bonding experience, seeing some folks outside of the brewery and doing a fun event. But I think the biggest point is you need to make them feel like family. And we call ourselves a tasting room at first. I know it's merged to a tap room, but we're always happy to pour them a splash of beer, help them figure out what they want. Somebody comes in, they don't know necessarily what they want. Well, you start a conversation. What do you usually like to drink? What don't you like? And then you pour them a couple of splashes and they taste that and they're like, wow, what is this? And then you can start the education process a little bit. And because you took that extra time with them, they're going to remember that and they're going to come back and they're going to tell their friends, hey, if you got a question about beer, stop by this place. They're really friendly, really welcoming.
And the importance of festivals to building your family.
Right. That was the other point. Thank you. So the challenge is always getting people into your space. We're in kind of an out of the way space so that we could afford the rent. Festivals bring a couple of thousand people in front of you in a very short length of time, but you get to get your beers in people's hands and let the beer sell itself, and then answer questions, talk up your place, talk up your other beers. I always like to have people, if we're pouring 4 beers at a festival, if they're showing interest in trying all of them, I ask them to scoot over to the side of the table. I'll have my cohort continue working the line of 20, 30 people, and I'll go through the whole 4 tasters with that person and hopefully generate a new customer. You've got that 1 20-second opportunity to make a connection. If you show them a little extra love, a little extra attention, you're going to win them over as a customer.
100%. Laura, you want to pick up on the baton? How have you seen the customer focus shift?
I think it's just really important for people to understand that the customer, let's see, how do I want to word this? It's a hierarchy over who you hire. I guess what I will start off with saying, I've seen a lot of craft brewery tap rooms advertise for employees. Oh, you must have Cicerone this, you must have, 3 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but to me, all of that stuff is very teachable. What you can't teach is you can't teach patience. You can't teach people to have understanding. You can't teach people, honestly, probably even friendliness. And so some of the best kind of servers that I ever hired, I hired this one young lady who said, hey, I've grown up in Denver my whole life. I don't know anything about craft beer, but I want to know about it because it's taking over my city. And I've worked at a Starbucks. And I said, okay, so customer service. You want to learn about beer. I can teach you how to pour a beer. I can teach you about the nuances of beer. And it became really fun. She was amazing at customer service. And B, it kind of became a game every time she had a shift. We would just quiz her on things just for fun on the side. And having your employees taste the beers. I mean, obviously, but being able to describe it. And I think being on the other side of that, being the customer, I have also experienced that where someone can be very warm, and very inviting. And yeah, they're there to talk about beer, but they might also say, oh, is this your first time here? Or where are you visiting? And so all of that, I just think there's so much to that you can't teach, and there's so much you can teach. And I just see some tap rooms focusing on, I think, some of the wrong areas. I also think it's kind of a red flag too if you see a tap room is constantly, hiring. Not because they're growing, it's because they can't keep anybody. So what's going on there? And then kind of vice versa. If I had somebody apply to my tap room who'd already worked at 4 other breweries in town, I was like, why can't you stay satisfied at a brewery? What's going on? So I think all of those small nuances in hiring the right people in your tap room are sometimes overlooked. People just want the qualifications. And I don't always think that that's the best way to go about it.
In this day and age, do you think that the hospitality side of things extends beyond beer?
Yeah, I think especially in a place like Denver where you're going to have a lot of competition. Absolutely. I know when we were talking a little earlier, so I can walk 1, 2, 3, 4. I can probably walk to about 7 breweries from my house. I have 3 of them that are 4 blocks from me in 3 different directions. But I will say there's one out of those 3 that I go to consistently. And it's because of my experience there. It's not because they give me free beer or anything like that. It's just that when I go there, I know that people are going to be kind. I know that the place is going to be clean. I know that I'm going to recognize some other people at the bar, and all of those people are usually pretty chill and welcoming. So there's little things. Not a single one of those breweries, I would say, has bad beer. It's not because of the beer, but it's because of how I feel when I go to those places.
Yeah. So let's dive into a little more of this personalization, connection, and community. Charlie, let's work on, other breweries. How do we connect with, help support? Like, how do you navigate your relationships or build on your relationships with other breweries? And how does that mean something to the customer?
Well, one way we work with other breweries is collaborations. And, we have a collab fest each year from the Colorado Brewers Guild. And we're doing two. We partnered with a brewery from upstate New York, Brewery Ardennes, and recently just brewed a seasonal triple that, has been very well received. We're also doing a collab with Prost soon, and we're going to take some recipes and use their equipment to produce the decocted open fermenter aged quadruple. So, and again, I hope I'm not using terms people are familiar with, but this is the beer industry. So anyway, we do that, and one of the things that we do every year, we have our Belgian Brew Fest up at our location, and we'll invite about 14 breweries from around Denver, the Colorado area that make Belgian beers, and they'll bring their Belgian beers, and we'll have a little festival out there, and that's hugely popular. We usually get quite a good crowd, and everybody just has a lot of fun, and so that's one way that we work with other breweries, and we've kind of built relationships with them now through things like that, and it pays off for all of us.
Did you say that you're also part of a bus loop?
We have been on occasion. We're not on a regular basis.
Gotcha. And that's another way that you can offer customers the opportunity to see multiple places. We talked about how to make your brewery the choice of those places, but giving people an opportunity to see a lot of different places. I've also seen some brewery districts that have been created, one in the Baltimore area in particular that has been highlighted in just terms of marketing and promotion and just getting people down to the area, which is super cool. And the passport programs. Tim, are you on a bike path? Are you part of any of that? You're muted.
Right. We are right off the Platte River Bike Path. So bike to work day is big for us. We'll set the tent up on the riverfront, and we don't do as much business at 6 to 9 in the morning for some reason, but on the way home, we catch them all on the way back. So that's a lot of fun.
Gotcha.
And
Awesome.
we do also on Tuesdays, you park your bike out front instead of driving, you get $1 off a pint.
Nice.
We try and do some encouragement there to get people to ride over and realize how close we are.
Very nice. Will you pick up on the personalization of the customer experience and talk a little bit about how you've seen your staff personalize it or how it's been personalized for you?
Well, one of the ways that my staff and a lot of my regulars personalize it is by making up their own beers. This practice started a good 10 years ago or so. They'll take one of our favorite beers that we're known for, Cherry Creek, and do concoctions with some of the other beers I have on tap, the Imperial IPA or the English Porter or the Black IPA, for example. And then they play around with it, 60-40 blend, 50-50 blend, until they get their personalized recipe dialed in. The fun part for me, though, is when I'm doing the TTB reports at the end of the month and trying to figure out how much beer we went through, I have to ask my bartenders, okay, so what is this beer that's in the cash register? Because it gets ordered so often, they actually create a button for it in the register. So they have a lot of fun with that. It allows my mug clubbers the opportunity to personalize their experience and name their own beer.
And did you say there was an incident at a festival recently where you were customized?
Yeah. So one of the fun things that we did a few years ago, every year the Brewers Guild has a festival up at Lake Dillon. It's one of the prettiest festivals in Colorado. And there happened to be an ice cream food truck on site. So I had somebody go up and get a scoop of ice cream into their taster glass. And they came back and we poured them some Cherry Creek and we made a Cherry Creek float, which ended up forming a line of about 50 people at the ice cream truck when people started asking, "Where'd you get that?" Unfortunately, the next year, everybody remembered the ice cream floats, and the ice cream truck wasn't there, and we got in trouble for it because there was no ice cream truck. So you got to be careful when you create experiences like that. You got to schedule it in advance, apparently.
Indeed. And Charlie, you made a mention, just to insert this here, about wit and kombucha. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Start over.
Yeah, we this sort of happened spontaneously in the tap room with the bartender talking to a customer, and they said, this wit beer would be nice if it had fruit in it. And so we thought, well, let's put some kombucha in it. So we mixed them 50-50. The combination became so popular, we actually kegged some of it, or we would make them up fresh at the bar. But a lot of people were ordering that because it was a nice, refreshing, lighter version of a wit beer, which is already a fairly light beer. And it was great in the summer, and people would order half a dozen of them and not be abusing alcohol. So it was low gravity enough that, it gave them an interesting flavor experience, and it was also less intoxicating. So on a hot summer day, it was something you could drink and not get hammered.
Nice.
And it tasted great.
Yeah. Mendy, I know this is random too, but will you talk a little bit about your nitro program?
Sure. We started out with the Nitro Milk Stout, which has kind of become our flagship. But we've expanded into making a whole number of nitro beers. If you come into the brewery, into the tasting room, we usually have 7 or 8 different nitro options. In addition to the milk stout, we do a peanut butter milk stout on nitro. We do a wit beer on nitro. I think we're willing to try just about anything on nitro. And the conversation about floats, nitro is a beautiful accompaniment to ice cream. So I've got to excuse myself for 1 minute.
No problem. Laura, will you pick it up there and talk a little bit about like the health consciousness and kind of our changing consumer and kind of the opportunity that presents?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of believe the craft beer movement really, hit, a big boom, a few years ago. Well, I say a few, but probably about 10 years ago when people were standing in line waiting for bottle releases. That was, to me, like the height of the hype. And when you think about it, those people were likely Gen X generation, but in their younger years. So they were at a point in their life where they had some expendable income, they had some time, and they were probably drinking a little bit more often. And what I see now is that the Gen X generation is starting to age out of that phase. While they probably still have the expendable income, they're choosing healthier options and healthier choices in life. They're visiting tap rooms less. They're definitely not staying outside in the cold and waiting hours in line for a bottled beer. They're getting it in other ways. So what I've seen a lot amongst some of my friends and family is that, they still really like that taproom experience. They like the taste of craft beer, but they're starting to turn to NA beverages. And that scene has exploded, not only with just options and quality, but just accessibility. I've traveled all over the United States the last few years. It's just kind of something my husband and I do. We take long weekends, and some of the most unknowing places have some of the best NA craft beers. One of those places I will say is New Orleans. Holy cow, I went to a brewery there and they had an NA beer on tap, which I haven't seen here in Denver. Not to say that it doesn't exist, but I wouldn't have thought that they would in New Orleans care about people who don't drink alcohol. I also think we're seeing that younger generation's really not into alcohol as much as maybe the older generation. So you're definitely seeing that switch. And I think if you want to keep that tap room atmosphere alive and that sense of community alive, you're going to have to cater to something besides your 6 taps of alcoholic craft beer.
Mm-hmm. We talked about tea and coffee. Charlie mentioned the kombucha. I also think the younger generation is a little more health conscious. So in addition to those of us who can't hang at the bar until 2 a.m. and drink what we used to drink, I think we're appealing more to that generation too. Is that what you're seeing?
Absolutely. And even just talking with people of the younger generation, you see it. And even if they are drinking alcohol, I'm noticing, at least at a brewery, I don't go to bars too often, but at a brewery, they're just getting tasters, and it's a more casual, I guess, situation than maybe I saw when I was their age, where it was like, what beer has the most alcohol in it? So definitely seeing I changed there. And then I think everybody's probably aware that, gluten-free beer, ciders offer some different health benefits. And so seeing a lot of switch towards that direction as well.
Welcome back, Mendy. If you would talk a little bit about kind of your indoor-outdoor experience and maybe some upselling with pairings. I think the food component is something we need to hit on before we close up.
Well, as far as indoor-outdoor experience in our situation, the indoor and outdoor experience are separate experiences. I think in a lot of places, you can walk into the tap room and walk out to the beer garden. Mm-hmm. Our places are a little bit over a block apart, so they're essentially we do separate programming for this. Now, in terms of food pairing, when we opened 30 years ago, it was not much of a thing, and you had to sell the idea of pairing food and beer. It was not really much practiced. Now I think it's a big component in how we promote what we're doing and sell what we have. Beer has, for so often been seen as a pedestrian beverage, and because of the homogenization of styles back 30 years ago, where everything was primarily light lager, there really wasn't much of an opportunity, I think, to pair beer with a variety of foods. But as we started exploring new and different styles, flavor matching really became a possibility. And I worked with a chocolatier here locally in Boulder who told me that first she started working with wine and chocolate, and she found beer way more interesting because beer has both sweet and bitter sides to its flavor character, whereas wine is primarily desserts to pair with.
We're losing you with your internet connection somehow, Mendy.
You got me back? Am I back?
You are at the moment. Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
So, exploring things like pairing desserts with IPAs was really interesting and very unusual. And now, as a result of work like that,
I lost the rest of that sentence. Definitely the upselling with food pairings has been helpful. And Charlie, I know you've done a lot. I liked the Valentine's Day. Was it eclairs you paired with?
Right. We worked with a local bakery. They made up a bunch of mini eclairs, and we compared we paired those with the beers. We've got one coming up where we're going to be doing it with macaroons. We every year do Girl Scout cookies and stuff just to give people, some flavor experiences. They'll taste the 4 beers and they'll get a full one of whatever one they like the best. But those pairings they're great for bringing people into the tap room. We bring in a lot of people that haven't been there before. So it's a way to meet new people and give people a taste of Belgian beer. And usually once they've tasted it, they tend to like it, even though they may not have known what it was before they came in.
Nice. Yeah, I know some of the restaurant programs that I've done. We've done a very successful pairing and upselling with the appetizer and the beer. If you order the appetizer, the bartender would suggest the beer, and vice versa. And so to build the sales on both sides was very effective as well. So we're kind of running up. I don't see any questions that we've had come in at this point. So that's why I've kind of kept us going. But let's wrap it up with kind of a, best practices in terms of like finding that middle of the road between listening to your customers and doing what it is that you love to do. Tim, will you start us off with some final words?
Sure, be glad to. I just want to reemphasize that the reason we've gotten to 15 years in such a overcrowded market, and especially the last 5 years of challenging times, is having that great crew up front. That's the first point of contact when a customer walks in the door. I've always been really lucky to have such great people with such incredible people skills. And like Laura mentioned earlier, if their beer skills need a little help, that's easy to do. But when you find that person with the incredible people skills, that is a huge bonus for your tap room, for your brewery. And then just remember, once you've got them, continue to treat them like family. I mean, part of the reason we have our Mug Club is to thank them for all of their years of support, and the benefits they get far outweigh the annual membership fee. And that's why we continually get renewals and why we've had to expand it twice in the last 10 years. Got to thank them once they become regular.
Got it. Laura,
Absolutely.
what do you think? Final words?
Absolutely. I think that your customer experience needs to be consistent. So even if you are hiring new people, or maybe you're changing things up in the tap room, it still needs to feel consistent when that customer comes in, because they're expecting a certain vibe and they're looking for that vibe. So I think making sure you do that is important. Also, piggybacking a little bit on what Tim was saying, the hardest thing I think is to get someone to walk through your brewery doors the first time. I don't think it's that difficult to get them to come back a second time, because if you did a good job that first time, then that's how the word gets out. They tell their friends, hey, I went to this new brewery. I didn't even know it existed. It'd be a great place to have a birthday party or something like that. So if you've got customers coming in for the first time, they're just as valuable as the people who are regulars, because they can be your next regulars, and you don't know who they know or what their needs might be in the future. And your brewery might be the answer for some of those needs.
I've actually seen lately some protocol around, if your bartender or your server finds out that somebody's there for the first time, that they let their manager know, that there's kind of some extra special TLC that goes around that first time visitor and their experience. Mendy,
I think that's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Mendy, do you do that kind of thing? And what would your final words be?
Well, it's my view that the craft beer consumer is not loyal to one brewery, but generally has what I would consider a list of favorites, and you want to be on that list. And obviously, well-trained staff that have the characteristics that Tim talks about. First line, that's the first line, and that's really important. I also think being really involved in your community is a big draw for consumers. So, we have our Left Hand Foundation. We do events that bring money into the foundation. The foundation distributes funds to local nonprofits. I think that kind of thing helps generate loyalty within your community. So I think just want to piggyback on the ideas that have already been expressed by Laura and Tim and say, make sure you're on the list of favorites. Mm-hmm.
Charlie, what are your wrap-up thoughts in terms of how do you become that brewery of choice?
Well, it all comes down to me it's keeping it from being a transaction, making it an experience, and ultimately experience leads to a relationship. And Tim referred to that. You get the regulars that come in, that's a relationship, but you can start a relationship the first time somebody walks in, and you're increasing dramatically the chances that they're going to come back. If they just serve you a beer, then you're like any other brewery. If you take the time to talk with people, understand what they like, give them that, they will be back.
100%. Well, thank you. I wanted to thank all of our panelists for being here today. Super psyched to get to visit with all of you. I'm in Ohio most of the time, so I don't get to see my Colorado people, so it's extra special for me. Also wanted to thank again Small Batch Standard, InTouch Labels for sponsoring CBP Spring Virtual Conference. It's super cool that all this stuff is available at no charge. And thank you to Andrew for inviting us. And for all the help that he has been in raising the awareness in the community of all these awesome things. So thank you so much. We'll sign off for now and we'll see y'all soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.